Hello, Bonnie.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I, you know what? I came a little bit early, because I'm always afraid I'm gonna be late. And I was in their geeks events chat,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and Garuda
Garuda.
X17 said, "Hey, did you guys know that there was waiting room music?" Which I did not know.
I
So
did
I was
not. Was that what I was
jamming out
hearing?
to the bossa nova. Whoever picked bossa nova for us, I thought was very apt, considering that we're talking
Yes.
about Alan Rickman today. So yeah.
Why is bossa nova appropriate for Alan Rickman,
I
one of
don't
the most
know.
British people ever?
I guess I know, but I guess I'm just imagining what Alan. Okay, maybe this is just me projecting, but I think like if I was picturing Alan Rickman at one of his fabulous celebrity-filled parties in the corner drinking a martini and making fun of people in his head and thinking, "I'm gonna write this down later." And
Oh
that's the
boy.
music I assume would be at a party like that. It's kinda like a breakfast like at breakfast at Tiffany's, that kind of party where it's like crazy
It
celebrity
felt
time.
I mean, it is crazy celebrity part. I mean, like, listen,
I
we could
mean
we could jump right into the book because there is a lot to talk about.
I
So we are
mean, ugh,
discussing
I had to reread
Madly.
some parts. I had to reread some parts because it's like there's so much name dropping, which is hilarious. But I also love. I mean, that's why you like read actors, celebrities, diaries, which I think are so much better than an autobiography. Because autobiography are usually written with a ghostwriter.
Yeah, they
Um,
don't really write
so
them. This is
yeah,
called
definitely
Madly
you.
Deeply, The Diaries of Alan Rickman. That is
Yeah.
our pick for January, and Bonnie picked it. And why did you pick it? Why did you had picked this up before we
Yeah.
decided to read it for book club? Why? Why did you
Well,
want to learn more about
I
this
was
guy?
okay, so in my writers group that I have with a bunch of people, the publicist of the British publisher of this book sent it to me as a gift
Oh,
because
wow.
I was saying how much I miss reading memoirs, and I was kind of in a slump. I think all of us sort of get into reading slumps sometimes where we're just not into it. And I was so Alan Rickman was such a big influence and muse in my mind, and I've loved him since the very beginning. Before, I mean, obviously Die Hard was his first big film, but uh Truly Madly Deeply, which is this it takes the title from that, was my favorite Alan Rickman movie, which is like a
Mhm.
very sad rom-com. But it's also very good if you can find it on streaming. But I was pretty devastated when he died. I mean, he and Bowie died in the same year. That's so not cool. And
Oh.
I was just like, as I was waving my fist at the sky, thinking anyone would care. My friend Jamie, who's in my writers group, was like, "Oh, well, this new book's coming out. I'll just send it to you." And it was such a delight to read because I personally love diaries. Like I have the Andy Warhol diaries, which let me tell you, you want to see some name dropping. Those Andy Warhol diaries, they're pretty scathing too, because he just makes fun of what everyone's wearing, which I guess is sort of mean girl Warhol type. But with this, it was a good mix of some digs, but also some praise and also some surprising bits. So I kind of felt like, even though this is, and by the way, this is condensing 27 volumes of diaries.
What?
Yeah, 27.
Well, if you look in the very back of this book, there are pictures of how he wrote his diary, and he did quite a lot of sketching
Oh, yeah.
amongst it. So
Yeah.
it was, even though it might have been a line or two, he in the book, when I got back to the end of the book, I was like, oh, he did some beautiful drawings here.
Uh-huh.
He did illustrations, and it was really quite interesting. I kind of wish I had seen a little bit more of the diary illustrated as it was, but I guarantee you they cut a lot of stuff out
Oh,
that
yeah.
was more bitchy.
I mean, his partner was sort of in charge of it, so I'm sure that she took some stuff out, and I'm sure there was other things taken out that maybe were to not make him look as whingy as possible. Like I could imagine. I mean, I've kept a journal since high school, and then I stopped journaling at the worst possible time to stop when I worked at Lucasfilm. But I kept a live journal at that time, so I feel like there's plenty of stuff in that. But it was, I mean, I left out a lot of stuff so I wouldn't get fired. But I do love the idea of delving into someone who's fairly private. Like Alan Rickman wasn't the type of actor that would just spill his guts on every talk show, and he hated
No, he
doing
clearly
interviews.
hated all press. He
Oh,
clearly hated having to do any. He was such a sort of, "Oh my god, these
Yeah.
Philistines, how dare they denigrate my work," I mean, kinda guy.
This is my favorite quote about journalists, and this is I take it to heart because I am a journalist, so I would have interviewed him if I had had the chance. In fact, I wrote his obituary for CNET, and it was probably way too long, but I don't care because he was such an important part of my, writing and love of movies. But anyway, I loved his quote where he says, "Talking with journalists always leaves me feeling uneasy and a little like those tribes who don't like having photos taken because they're giving away their souls." And I was
Yeah,
like, "That's pretty accurate." I would say that's accurate of him.
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
No,
But
I
I
mean,
mean, there's so many great parts of this book, and I hope you guys liked it because I know it's a different than what we've been reading in this group, but I don't know, I really loved it.
so I kinda went back and forth whether I would ever wanna hang out with him or not. Like, he is so let's just approach it like,
Okay,
I
okay.
mean, let's approach
Here's
it.
an idea, here's an idea. You wanna talk about, like, has your opinion of him changed since you read the book, or is he
Well,
pretty much exactly how you thought?
I will say that I didn't really have an opinion of him.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
I had no opinion of him, so that
Okay.
was at least easy.
Yeah, starting from
But
scratch.
I was from scratch, and I was like, "Okay, so I'm gonna sit down and write a diary for 7 or however many long years, and I'm going to name drop every famous person I ever met." And I was like, is that really something I mean, guys, and it's so impressive, like, he's hanging out with Sting, he's hanging out with writers, David
Yeah.
Hare, Cameron Diaz, like,
Mhm, mhm.
every and he explicitly drops the queen. He's like the queen. So he obviously was a very status hungry kind of guy. But if you look at his background, he came from a very poor background. He was,
Yep,
his dad died at 8. His
yep.
mom struggled to raise 4 kids. She was at the post office. So, like, this is
He lived in an
obviously,
estate. He lived in an estate. He didn't even and he started acting at a pretty late age because he was a
yeah,
designer. He went to art school to be a designer and then decided to do acting when he was 26, but he had to start from scratch.
yeah,
So,
which I
yeah.
found astonishing. So I kind of was, like, this guy
Mhm.
who wants to be so badly in Hollywood. But at the same time, he obviously always felt like an outsider because, the most vitriolic and bitter entries are like all the Oscars and all
Yeah.
the awards that he's doing.
Yeah.
He's
I
always
mean, I
so
do love
like,
that. And it's also
yeah,
like it is kind of that I don't want to say trope, but it is kind of that stereotype of the Shakespeare theater trained, actor, which is actually kind of a parallel of his character in the Galaxy Quest.
yeah,
Did I say
it
that?
is. Yes, yes, that looks
Right?
right.
Where he's
He's
just a
so good at
guy.
it.
Yeah, and I think he's playing himself, to be honest. I think he's
Of
playing
course.
himself in a sci-fi movie because it's like a lot of actors that are British start in Shakespeare, start in theater, and then they go into movies and TV.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the I say the younger generation that's changing, but in America that was never the case. It was just
No. I mean, they have incredible skills and they're
yeah.
actually trained at what they do and they have versatility. And yes,
But
of
they bring
course,
it over
British theater people are like incredible.
Yeah, I mean, but they bring that over to a certain degree of acting as a craft, but also acting is not necessarily artwork. Method actors drive them up the wall. I mean, it's funny because Christopher Lee was the same exact way. I'm going to name drop. So when I got to talk to Christopher Lee on Lucasfilm, because he played Count Dooku, obviously in the prequels, but I was like, how was it working with Hayden Christensen, which this is his first really big role in movies. I think he'd done some indie movies, and
Yeah.
Ewan McGregor and some other actors. And he's like, well, they're learning, and he's like, but they don't have to stay in character when they eat a bologna sandwich. I think is what he said.
Oh, man, amazing.
Whereas, like, he's done everything. I mean, Christopher Lee, and that's kind of how I looked at this with Alan Rickman. He's that quintessential British theater trained actor who is kind of almost like a Darcy character from a Jane Austen movie, where he's often to the side of the party, critiquing everyone in his head.
Yeah, that's
Um,
exactly what he does, which I do as well. Like, let's
yeah,
be honest. I'm sitting here saying this guy's kind of a uppity snob, and I'm like, that's what you do, Felicia.
I mean, no, you don't. You're not. I would never call you
I
a
kind of,
snob,
but
but
it's not a snob. It's just I realize and actually reading the book, it made me be more appreciative of the art of acting and
Yeah.
him. I mean, I would guarantee you he was a very difficult actor to direct and work
Oh,
with. Like,
oh, he's notorious for changing scripts. In fact, for Die Hard, he had all these changes for Die Hard, and Joe Silver, I think, was the director on
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And he wrote a bunch of notes. I mean, they did change. They did take some of his suggestions. Like, I think Gruber was supposed to be in like tactical outfit, and he's like, no, 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 he should be wearing a suit, like a really nice
Hmm.
Valentino or something, and or Gucci, or I don't know what it was. It was a nice suit, like a couture suit. And also he had like all these suggestions. In fact, one of the suggestions was that Gruber was pretending to be a hostage, like he was a mole in the.
Oh,
Anyway,
wow.
he gave him a lot of suggestions. I think a couple of them were used, but when you're filming and you're an actor and you're not even the lead,
To
you
give
don't
you notes, that is some arrogance.
do that. And by the way, many actors are notorious for doing it. I think Chris Evans is really notorious for
I
doing
mean,
it.
there are a lot, but you
Yeah.
unless you're of a high status, you don't do that. And he's coming
No.
in this is his
Yeah.
first film, and he's the bad guy, and he's like, "Here are my notes," and like it's just.
And
But
he
at the
didn't want to
same,
do it. He
yeah,
didn't want to do it. That's a funny thing you learn in his diaries. He was in LA for 2 fucking days and he lands this movie,
yeah,
and that alone he should be excited about, but he didn't
oh
want to do
yeah,
an action movie. He's theater trained, right? He wants to do serious drama,
yeah,
and his agent talked him into it, but what really caught him in wanting to do this was that the African American, the black characters in this were, uh were great characters. They were complex characters, positive characters. They weren't
mhm, mhm.
criminals. They weren't drug addicts. And you have to remember at the time this movie was being
Especially
made.
'88. That was '88. That
Oof,
was
if
yeah.
you look at movies being made in the 80s, it's a lot of, let's just say, people of color in the, villain or bad parts of plot, and then not so much. I mean, Eddie Murphy, I guess, is the not like with Beverly Hills Cop. That's different, but I don't know. I understood what he was saying, but also I'm glad that he wanted to pick films that showed minorities or people that aren't normally shown as complex, interesting characters. Uh,
Especially for the time, yeah. No, I mean, I have no problem with here's an entry that I loved. Long, difficult day. The scene is designed around a lighting effect. I rest my case. On arriving, I announced that today I would be a marionette. I would be very well behaved. Ironic laughter.
yeah, I mean,
I love it, but like, I
uh,
don't know if I want to work with him in his judging eyes,
yeah,
constantly like it's fascinating. It really is. And then you have him with this incredible like confidence and uh devotion to his art. And then on the flip side, he's just wanting to be around famous people all the time. Like he
yeah.
obviously lived for name dropping and being around famous people and name dropping those people.
Now
And
here's the thing, though.
nothing wrong with that. Nothing
I
wrong with
wonder
it.
about that though, because I know that the line that the marketing is on this book is that he always wanted to publish his diaries in some sort of format that he would approve, or take things out or whatever. But I wonder if that's actually true. I don't think he ever wanted these things published, because
Oh,
he's saying
really?
a lot of things that I don't know if he would.
I mean, Bonnie,
I
listen,
don't
you're
know.
dead.
I
Okay,
don't know.
You're dead. Don't you want to spill
You're
all
dead.
the things you like all the I have so many NDAs and sometimes
I
I'm
know.
okay with them and then
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, I would love to just tell
Oh
the
yeah.
world
No,
what happened
definitely.
to me,
Let me
you
just
know?
let me, I will say, out of personal experience, I can definitely say Ewan McGregor is definitely self-absorbed.
Yeah. Well, a lot of actors are. Let's
100%.
be honest. Let's be honest. Like it
100%. But like, I
I,
like when this book first came out, everyone was just gravitating towards all the Harry Potter stuff, which I don't think was that revealing, because he did say in many, many
oh,
interviews that he had some ideas about Snape, and also he didn't really want to do it after. He didn't want to continue the role. It's kind of like Harrison Ford wanting Han Solo to be killed off in the second movie.
yeah.
It's kind of like that situation until J.K. Rowling, or I guess we should call her Voldemort, because I don't
Yeah,
want to say her
well,
name out loud.
Joanne, he calls her Joanne Rowling.
Jojo? Yeah, something like that. She let him, oh, spoiler alert, do earmuffs for count to 20 if you haven't read the Harry Potter books.
Oh,
But at point of
okay, okay.
uh, that Snape was in love with Harry Potter's mom. And
Yeah.
that's the story was, once you know that, using that in
Mhm.
your brain as an actor for that character, I think that's what compelled him. But I will tell you, there's some pretty like scathing things, and I know that Daniel Radcliffe has laughed at it. Like, I don't think he takes it super,
I
super
mean, he
serious.
isn't. He's just like a grumpy uncle. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
Emma
he gets
Watson doesn't
emotion.
enunciate her words,
Yeah, I
and
mean, it was.
this guy stepped on my cloak, and like, it's not that
Yeah,
big a deal. I mean, I'm sure he's very denigrating of like what are the interesting was when he was on. I think he was on the set of Sweeney Todd,
hmm,
and he was talking about acting with a theater actress, I think Helen Mirren,
yep.
and then the other actress. Oh my God, she's married to Tim Burton. Blah blah blah. What's her name? Anyway,
Helena Bonham
Helena
Carter.
Bonham Carter, and he's like film actress versus a theater actor, and
Yeah,
essentially he said the theater actress gives and to the other actor, but basically Helena Bonham Carter was like it's all about her.
yeah.
She doesn't give to anybody else, which is
But
so interesting.
yeah, and also I like the line he said about her, that she has like a middle school boy, junior high sense of humor.
Oh yeah.
When they were like the line "Take your wand out" or "Take out your wand," she would just reduce herself into hysterics laughing because she was thinking of penises,
Yeah.
and it was just like, but also the way he phrases it, like I phrased it as a normal person, the way he wrote it is the line "Take out your wand" reduces Helena Bonham Carter to helpless mirth and will be a bit of a Waterloo come Thursday. What the
Oh,
hell
I
does
love
that
that.
mean? But it's also like, yeah, I mean, it's so funny because he kind of is such a character in real life that when you know this about him and you see him portraying different characters on screen, it's kind of just versions of him.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, he acts like he's a he acts, but he essentially played very close versions of himself. He wasn't one to disappear into a role. He like, I'm
Yeah.
here, bitches, and
Yeah.
that's awesome. Like nobody was like him.
I mean,
But
the
at the
fact
same,
that he wrote
did
that Sigourney Weaver muscled into his shots.
oh yeah, yeah. He was like
Which is
everything's about with
hilarious.
Sigourney Weaver.
And
Also,
that's what the character says.
he hated Gwyneth Paltrow for some reason.
I
Like you could really
know.
tell. I was like, I wonder what she did.
You know what I think it was? I think when he was making a movie with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck in the 90s, it was like frat boy zone. And I think wasn't
Oh.
she dating one of them? Wasn't she dating Affleck
Did she?
or yeah. Gwyneth
Mm.
Paltrow? Yeah. She
I
was
don't
dating
remember who she's dated.
yeah, because remember it's that whole oh, I think it was Matt Damon. It was that whole thing about I don't want to revert this into a Weinstein discussion, but yeah,
Yeah.
that was at the time when she was just starting her career. But I love the idea that Rickman talked about Ben and Matt as Affleck crashes in later. Matt Damon he writes this is about Dogma when he's filming Dogma in 1997. He goes, the room is suddenly full of baseball caps, popping cans of water, iced tea, whatever, peeling oranges, potato chips, cigarette smoke. We bungee jump our way through the script. I mean,
I love that. It made me want to be on the set. That was the one that I was like, "Oh, I wish I'd been on the set of Dogma."
right? Like it just,
Yeah.
it's very American, obviously. And also Kevin Smith. He's a
Yeah.
very different director than
Oh, for
probably other
sure.
directors that he was.
He probably, like, it was like, looked at him like he was an insect, but then finally loved him at the end. I
Yeah.
loved it.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I like stuff like this because you get to see, yeah, there's going to be some name dropping, which is also, I didn't realize how big of a, I mean, he wasn't a star fucker per se, but
Yeah.
British people don't generally, and again, I'm probably going to get canceled for saying this, but British people don't generally like to show their fandoms like Americans do. Like if you were at a celebrity party, okay, perfect example. So I think you were at this party. It was the Entertainment Weekly party at the top of Hard Rock Cafe for Comic Con many, many years ago, and it was the Entertainment Weekly party. So all the celebrities were invited, and there was a rule that you could not take photos.
Yeah.
And so people were just being themselves. They didn't, and I think there was also a rule no journalists were allowed in. But I slipped in because my old boss was in charge of the party, so I was like I just snuck in. But also I didn't go as a journalist. I wasn't doing that anyway. I just wanted to hang out with Seth and Claire and some other people. Name drop. And so, but anyway, I remember seeing the cast of Game of Thrones there, and then I saw the cast of Parks and Rec, and there's or not yeah, like some comedians and stuff, American comedians. And it's like night and day. Oh no, that's not what it was. It's Vampire Diaries. So the Vampire Diaries cast versus the Game of Thrones cast, which is very British versus American, right?
Yeah, of course.
And, the Brits were just watching it kind of like they were in a circus and didn't know where to stand, and then the Americans were just, like, lighting shit on fire and dancing and wanting to hit people, and yeah, it was just, it's one of those moments where I'm like, how do people deal with being a celebrity party when they're not used to that kind of ruckus? And again, I was also sitting next to, I think, Mark Gaddis at one point, and I was a huge Sherlock fan, and I was just like, "Oh, shit," like, that's Mark, and he was just, like, sipping a drink and just staring at everyone. But also I could see in his brain probably saying Alan Rickman-esque stuff in his head.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Peter Dinklage looked like he did not want to be there at all. So
I
it's
mean, listen, I don't really care about being around celebrities, and the closest I was to any situation where that Alan Rickman is name dropping pretty. I mean, also, okay, can we? It was the okay. I'll finish my thought. The
okay.
EW party at Comic Con.
Yeah,
And, you feel kind of fancy when you're around a ton of famous people, but at the same time, none of them I didn't make new friends there. I wasn't, like,
yeah,
meeting them, I'm just staring at them, and I'm like,
yeah,
"Well, this isn't fun."
yeah.
But okay.
I think that whole Comic-Con year, I kept running into George R. R. Martin at parties, and we would just sit next to each other because he's an actual celebrity, but I wanted to be near another writer, not an actor, because I thought it would
Yeah,
be
yeah.
interesting. But also, he was holding court for most of the time because people knew who he was and just wanted to talk to him. But it was just interesting because, like, I never get used to it, but I'm not a celebrity, so I'm not. But then I have friends who are, I guess you would call celebrities, and I don't think of them as celebrities. So maybe it's
Mhm.
a mix of that. But I know that Comic Con started turning into this. People weren't even caring about panels or discussions or trailer drops. They were all talking about what party are you invited to? What party are you going to?
Yeah,
And
and that all makes me tired. Also,
It's exhausting.
can we talk about how this guy the one thing I did think, I was like, "This guy has the life I would never want." This guy was going to dinner, a party,
Okay, I'd
a
like to hear about.
lunch
I'm gonna
every
see though.
single day. He was
He
doing
probably kept
something with other
he
people.
probably kept the
I mean,
Ivy afloat. Like, if you think of how many times he was eating at the Ivy, he probably kept that
oh,
restaurant afloat. Like, I just
yeah, and then
wonder.
that one Italian place. I just don't understand why somebody would wanna go out and meet people or to a play or to an event or to a fundraiser. This guy was out on the town, I'm not kidding, every
Constantly,
single night. I don't know
constantly.
how you live
Yeah.
like that.
And also, I think sometimes the way he writes, and Andy Warhol does this in his diaries as well, I don't think it was meant to be diaries. I think he's just writing shit down so he remembered what he did that week.
Yeah,
So, you
maybe.
know
I
what I
mean,
mean?
and for a guy who grew up really poor, who
Yeah,
obviously was orphan, like, it must be of every time is a thrill to
yeah.
prove to the world that he belongs in those. But by the very virtue of him keeping a diary and writing everybody's name down, did he ever really feel like he belonged? Probably not, right?
Probably not. It was probably like just people watching, right? It's like
Yeah.
watching a circus. Like I said before, it's not necessarily you're bonding heavily with these people, though I do think that theater actors tend to have stronger bonds with each other than maybe not film and TV actors. I could be wrong
Yeah.
about that, but it just because you're in a lot, you're doing, two or three shows a night, a day, or whatever, and you're bonding with these actors, and it's a live audience. You never know what's going to happen, and I don't know, like I read this and I was surprised at how much name dropping there was, but also I wondered if he just did that because again, maybe secretly deep down, he was just stoked to be part of the celebrity circus and be part of it. And he can make
To
fun of
bring
it
it
all he
I'm
wants.
just interested. I'm just
Yeah.
interested as a person, like, what kind of person, and then what I didn't actually get I had to read his Wikipedia, but right before we started, I was like, what kind of just wondering what kind of person would be his 20, 15-year goal to I'm gonna keep a diary and rather, he does talk about his family a little bit. He talks a lot about people dying, so he
Mhm.
obviously had that on his mind a
Yeah,
lot.
I mean the selections about I mean what he wrote about his mom dying was
Yeah. Oh, it's
very
heartbreaking.
it's heartbreaking, but it was also right on, it was right on. Like if you've ever had anyone in your life that you're close to die, that
Yeah.
grief is just a weird thing to deal with and it sneaks up on you, but also it's not something that you can really explain unless you've gone through it yourself. So
Mhm,
I'm
mhm.
glad that there were like humbling moments. I'm glad there were more personal moments in there.
Yeah, yeah. And
I'm
there was
glad there
some
was
very
less I'm
artistic
glad that, go ahead.
I just loved it when he you could tell there was a genuine love for theater. Like that, it was
Oh,
what really impressed me. He loved watching actors. Even when he was critical, he just loved the process. He
yeah.
wanted it to be great. He wanted everybody to be as great as they could be. And when he saw people slacking, and he was so denigrating of directors, like I
Oh
had to
yeah.
direct myself.
Oh
I
yeah.
just love all of it.
And he does this thing which I think is a theater thing, but also a very British thing. He would be really upset when actors would show up late to
Yeah.
things
Oh
because
yeah.
he would call them like princes or something. I can't remember what. Oh, I'll have to look it up. Which ones he was talking about specifically, but yeah, it's like there's also kind of a note of disdain a little bit for the Hollywood machine because I know
Yeah.
when he was in the Harry Potter movies, he he was saying that there are these great theater actors that are in this movie, but they're what he called glorified extras. So you'd have
Yeah.
like, Maggie Smith and Michael Gambon and Robert Hardy and Miranda Richardson and Robbie Coltrane and just the list goes on and on and on of these theatrical legends, and they're just kind of like a side note in a kids movie. And I know that really bugged him, but also, if he was directing and he wrote a Harry Potter movie, what would that look like? You know what I mean? Like if he wanted all of his changes in there, I don't think it would be about the kids. I think it would just be about the teachers. And by the way, I'm okay with that, but it would be very, very different. I mean,
Yeah.
very different. Yeah. So it's, and the way he talks about movies he's done or movies he's seen, because he was an avid movie watcher as well, he sounds like a movie critic, which is also kind of funny because he just makes fun of, his disdain for movie critics. That's pretty obvious in this book, but he sounds like one. Like, I don't know if you saw the movie About a Boy. It
Yeah.
was like Nicholas Holt's Big Break, the actor that's in that. And
Yes, of course. Yeah.
he called it the way he described it was the kind of depressing English film where single mothers and amnesty workers are ugly people in oversized sweaters.
Wow.
I mean, burn. That's a
Wow.
burn. But that's something you would think a film critic would say. You know
My
what I mean?
favorite thing, I will tell you my favorite thing, because you know how I feel about craft service.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
In 2010, he wrote, Car to Livingston for the HP rap party, Harry Potter rap party. Almost every expense spared, at least in the food department.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
It
that's
was
the
like,
thing. Like,
I love it.
he is the peanut gallery, right? But he's
Yeah.
just not saying these things out loud. So
And you can
read
hear it in
the
his
book.
voice, his disdainful, flat as voice.
Oh,
And
and I found who he's complaining about that Nicole Kidman. This is about the production of Private Lives in 2002. That
mhm.
Nicole Kidman and Toby Maguire arrive
Yeah.
half hour late. Why come in at all, petty prince? And it's like, holy shit! Like it's just
Yeah.
I could, and you're right. I hear it in his voice. Now I did not get the audiobook, so it's
I
obviously
didn't either. I don't know
not
who read
him
it.
because it can't be him because he's dead. It's published post death. So I'm
Yeah.
not sure who reads it, but it's just his. He is Snape, right? He
He's
is
totally safe. Here's another one.
okay.
Uh, Harry Potter pickup, running in, pointing wand, expensive Doctor Who stuff.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I mean, it's I just love this book so much because you just really. Oh, and here's the other thing. He's into boring shit too. So the fact that I shouldn't call it boring, but the fact that he's obsessed with gardening is
Yeah.
also kind of endearing, and that's all he wants to do. And in fact, I think there were some entries where he's just like back-breaking work on the garden. I love it, kind of entries. And
Yeah,
also
yeah,
he
yeah.
does crossword puzzles. Like he still has that like old man thing going for him, but also like or quintessential like quaint hobbies.
I
Uh,
mean, yeah, and also what I loved, the Hollywood stuff aside, it felt like
yeah.
he was a deeply theater London actor. And what I
Oh yeah.
found really cool is that I mean, yes, he's dropping names like,
Yeah.
uh, totally like Terry Gilliam and Barbara Streisand and all these things. But at the same time, he's also socializing constantly with people, including artists and visual artists and architects and designers and artists of all walks of life. And so he really, it seemed that's the thing that I was a little jealous of because
Yeah.
LA doesn't have that scene where
Well,
artists get together and kind of,
I
like,
think you
commingle as much, and I think London and New York have that sort of, like, acting is an art form.
yeah.
Acting is something to be honored and to dig into and love for the craft of it, and
Mm,
they are as artistic and, achieving as a classical musician or an opera singer or a architect or an artist, and that is what as an actor, every time I go to New York, I feel like, "Oh, wow, this really is a talent. This is not only a talent, it's a craft and it's art." And you don't get that sense of in LA, and people
oh,
don't really
totally.
treat it as much either, and it's
Yeah,
really
it's a
interesting, and I felt
different
a little jelly.
yeah, I mean, I always feel jealous of, and maybe it's a different era I wish I'd been born in, but I am always jealous of the Dorothy Parker, Algonquin Round Table.
Mhm. Oh,
And
yes. Oh, so jealous.
where you basically get all these snarky writers and critics and just whatever hanging out like Fran Lebowitz types hanging out together at a bar in a hotel, and they bounce ideas off of each other, but they also sit there and complain a lot.
Yeah.
Just which
Yeah.
you are on both sides of the spectrum, Felicia, because you're also an author, not just you're a writer, screenwriter.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm a little bit of everything, but at the
Yeah,
same
but
time, I don't hang out with other artists, and I don't
writers are
feel
different. Like
like that.
writers,
Yeah.
I would say in my writers group, and there's some pretty prominent. I'm not going to name drop about them, but there's some pretty prominent people there. They only complain about stuff that only writers would understand. And
Yeah.
then you have like my art friends all know each other, but they have a different simpatico than I would ever have with them because I'm not technically an artist. I like to
Mhm.
do art, but I'm not in a gallery, I'm not in a museum, I'm not doing showings. And then with actors, it's a whole other ilk of people, just like comedians.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
When I was doing stand up, there was a very close knit group of us that were starting out that of women that weren't very many of us, and
Mhm.
I got
Mhm.
to know them through just having to deal with stand up, which is like being in the trenches. It's definitely warfare. It's not.
Oh, well, I mean, that I did a little bit of stand-up, and I could not
Oh,
stand hanging out with the dudes who do stand-up. Like,
oh
that
no,
is
I never
not
hung out with the dudes.
yeah.
Never hung out with the dudes. It's always the women you want to hang out with. But
Mhm.
I don't know. It's like I got a little I feel you because when I'm in New York it's just a different energy and it's a different creative vibe than
It's a
LA.
different approach. It's a different approach to
Yeah.
art in general because art can be art for art's sake in those cities more than
Mhm.
here where art is commodity, purely commodity.
Yeah, I mean,
And that's fine. You just have to know that going in. You can't, like, be naive about that.
yeah.
And you are a product, and you are and this is it's a commodity, and it's a transactional situation. So, yeah, I feel like I would love to live in London and one day be like, "Oh, wow,
Oh,
I am an artist," but
oh,
it's
yeah,
hard to
like,
feel that in LA.
I'm still kicking myself for, teenage me not just moving to London,
Oh,
when
yeah.
I had my chance, when I had my I mean, you always have a chance. I mean, I could still do it now if I really wanted to, but I
Mhm.
think I always kind of joke about this with my friends who are British that they basically have the same 20 actors in everything, and then in America, you'll have someone in a big thing and win an award, and you never hear from them again. And
Yeah, of course.
it's just so varied here, and also our aesthetic is different, our how we, we don't celebrate character actors like they do in England, and
Mhm.
we don't celebrate quirkiness as much. It's more like it's a flip it, whatever the audience is into that decade, that's what's gonna happen, but I don't know. I reading this book, I was just like, ugh, like I'm a big fan of Stephen Fry, and his autobiographies are great. In fact, I'll probably suggest we read one of them at some point. But
Yeah.
he also came from humble beginnings. In fact, he got arrested as a kid for doing credit card theft, identity
What?
theft. Yeah.
Stephen Fry?
Yeah, Stephen Fry was a little rustabout before he got his act together, and,
Wow.
the best thing ever is when he went to I mean, this is a side note, but when he went to I think it was Oxford or Cambridge, I don't remember which one, but that's where he met Emma Thompson and Hugh Laurie, and they were in this writers group or this actors group that just you have to remember they're in their 20s, right? Or early 20s, early late
Yeah.
teen and they're acting like, uh, what's the Brideshead Revisited kind of situation where they all like act like lords and ladies.
Oh,
I think
boy.
I think Hugh Laurie was pretending to smoke a pipe and it wasn't even lit, but it was like a Sherlock Holmes kind of pipe. Like but they were hilarious. And Rowan Atkinson's from that group. So you have that group of comedians and actors that kind of all fell into each other in college. And Alan Rickman didn't really, I don't think he really had that. So there is sort of like, I don't want to say a class system, because like I said, Stephen Fry came from humble beginnings,
Yeah.
but there is a sort of clickiness, I
Oh,
think,
yeah,
to
for
the
sure.
theater in England, just like there is
But
in
there's
Irish.
cl there's clickiness everywhere, let's be
There's
honest. And then
definitely,
honestly, we're all that's half of that's not even Hollywood. It's
it's
just
every
human
any
nature.
creative.
You're always
Yeah.
trying to get into the clique that's above you. It's like a human nature thing. So,
But I will say I do want to give you credit though, because I always thought that Geek and Sundry and what you were creating in the beginning was definitely an attempt at like the geeky Algonquin roundtable, because you
oh,
had
that's
all
very
these
sweet.
talented people surrounding you, but you also like really nurtured creativity and risk taking and experimentation, and that also all came out of just getting fed up with the Hollywood system and just wanting to do something on your own. With, I think your best quote ever is, don't ask for permission. Don't
Yeah.
wait for permission, because you're never going to get it. So you should just do it. And I think that's a little taste of what I got of what I wish LA was more like. And
Yeah.
it's not. I mean, you can kind of pick your small
You know,
group.
I think there was a little bit of that before COVID. It all sort of fell apart. And also there was
Like,
the height of Comic-Con. There was like a sort of like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
sort of Comic-Con clique where it completely fell apart once Comic-Con just kind of reached saturation point and people
yeah,
started going different directions. And it was a really cool, 5, 6 years of time. And you just had, I guess the thing that I realized is like, you surround yourself with people who you want aspire to be, and I
yeah,
think that way you'll grow. And I'm like, I really wish there were some architects around I could hang out with, or like visual artists, or even theater people, because theater doesn't exist here in LA. I don't know if I'd really love to do theater. I just like making stuff, and I'm not even sure the craft of acting is so fascinating to me versus like being a part of something and making things together with people.
hmm,
So, I'm still like feeling myself out, but at the end of the day, it is nice to get a glimpse inside an amazing person's mind who's still in the business that I'm in. And yet, so I could definitely humanize the bigger stars more because he's humanizing them. He's kind of staring at them and be like, oh, wow, Helena Bonham Carter's really phoning it in here. She really doesn't care about anybody else. And Kate Winslet, I've known her for 15 years and she doesn't talk to any of the actors after a scene. It's so weird. It is very interesting. And
yeah.
his perspective is very astute and very character driven and just really fun to read.
And he also, just his wording is interesting, but I find that the case always with British people, because they cared about vocabulary, I think, a bit more than we did.
Yeah.
And so they just understand how to write prose in everyday language. But I don't know. It's an interesting. I think if he was more of a writer, we would get more detail, because I feel like,
Yes.
I think
I
there
don't
was a
think he was
big
a writer. It doesn't feel like he was a real writer, which is
well,
interesting.
he
He
called
tried.
Trudy and Sting's Christmas party Byzantium meets Fairyland. And I was
Huh.
like, continue with that, because it was
Yeah.
like this huge thing that Trudy and Sting have been together for so long, because they're really into tantric sex, and they're
Yeah.
really
Oh,
into
yeah.
weird stuff. I shouldn't say weird, just not necessarily vanilla stuff.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know, oh, well, tell me more about this party. Like, he went to a Mick Jagger dinner party. I'm like, Jesus,
Oh,
tell us
yeah.
about that.
I
You think
know.
he's
He
doing this
he
thing?
dropped so many names and it's just dazzling. You're just like, "Wait, what?
It's
He knows
dazzling,
Richard
but
Attenborough? He knows
he
like."
doesn't go into detail like I would have. If I went to a Mick Jagger dinner party, I'd be telling you like what the napkins felt like, what
Yeah.
houseplants he has, if he has any pets wandering around, what the bathroom soap smelled like. Like, I would be giving you a full tour with my writing,
Yeah.
but he would just, that's why I think sometimes these entries aren't necessarily to be read by anyone but himself, and it's just a reminder of what he's been doing. And he even says, I think, towards the end of the book, because also he's battling cancer, pancreatic cancer, at the end of this
Well, he
book.
had prostate cancer first, and then he had
Yeah,
pancreatic cancer, which
yeah.
he talks. You have to get a footnote in there to see what he's going. He doesn't talk about himself at all,
I know. And
and
I
then he has
wonder,
a stroke.
yeah, yeah.
Ugh.
I mean, there are a lot of footnotes in there for health reasons, like, oh, went to see Doctor So and so, but you don't know why. And
Yeah.
I do think, though, at some point he kind of realized he kind of ran through his life. Like when you read these entries, you're like, holy shit, this guy does more in a day than I've done in a year. And
Yeah.
but he didn't really take the time to, I don't want to say rest on your laurels, because that's not what British people do. They just, they just move on. It's not about
Mhm.
the circus of it all. But I don't know if I was him. I just, and I tell this to I have to practice it myself because I'm always in the present and I'm always worried about the future, and I don't look back on what I've accomplished because I'm always comparing myself to people that have accomplished much more than I
No,
have.
I know, that's very destructive.
And it's very destructive, but creative people do this all the time. And I think
Yeah.
with him, I don't think he was comparing himself to other people that were better. I think he just didn't acknowledge all the cool shit he was doing. I think he was just like, he was name dropping and he's writing all this stuff, but I don't know if he ever like enjoyed the moment, as it
Yeah.
was happening. And that's sad to me because
That's
we have
interesting,
to
yeah.
survive. Yeah. But you know what? That a lot of artists don't do that and a lot of writers don't do that. Creative people don't. It's like that whole keep on doing the side hustle, got to do this, got to do that, got to work on this, and you don't reflect until you're, in a retirement home or something. It's like
Yeah.
you should always reflect on I don't know. I like reflecting on things, not too much because then you can get caught up in the past and all the things you wish you had done that you didn't do differently.
Yeah, yeah, that's not
But
okay. That's
yeah,
not
but with this book, I was just like, damn, at least he wrote it all down. I mean, at least there's a record
Yeah.
of it. So you can read these little snippets and you'd be like, and also there's things about actors. I mean, we all know that Tim Allen's a jerk, so that's not really that groundbreaking.
I know, and today the whole thing with Pamela Anderson coming out, and after I read this, I was like, "Girl, I believe you."
Yeah.
Like,
But also, like, the line that Linda Florentino too often blows her lines. It is funny
yes.
because, there's no NDA about this, so I'm just gonna say it. There are certain actors in Hollywood, Johnny Depp being one of them, that can't memorize shit. So they have
Well,
to do
they have an ear thing. Yeah, they have ear things.
they have an earpiece that reads them their lines, and then they say it. That being
Well,
said, Johnny Depp
that
is
was taught to Johnny Depp by Marlon Brando.
yeah.
Marlon Brando at least said that that's the only way you can actually be spontaneous and know your lines, that you don't know it before you say it.
Oh, see, I think that's a better example of why he did it, but not why
He
Johnny
did it, but I don't know
Depp.
about yeah, I don't know.
Like,
I can't judge Johnny Depp, but
I can see Marlon Brando's taking that approach, and that sounds real. But like, there's plenty of other actors, and also one of my favorite actors, Amy Sedaris, who's also a comedian, writer, creator. She said that she hates memorizing things, and she just can't. So she would write all her lines. Strangers with Candy is a great series. You all should watch it. But she
yeah.
would write all of her lines on props. So
Really?
that's why she's constantly moving in Strangers with Candy. She'd open up her locker and there would be a whole page of dialogue right there that we
What?
can't see. Yeah. And I was just like, that's so great that she would write lines under
Wow,
and
that's
on some random
amazing.
papers. And yeah, she would write things everywhere. And it was just funny because then, of course, she could get pranked by, you know, well, not Steve Carell. Who's the guy? Who's the late night talk show host that's also a comedian with the
Stephen
glass?
Colbert?
Stephen Colbert.
Yeah.
Stephen Colbert could prank her pretty easily by taking stuff out and rewriting things on the prop.
Oh, hilarious.
But I do like the idea of, there's acting, but also memorization is one thing, but memorization and spontaneity and adding character and adding some sort of believability and genuineness to it. I have the utmost respect for actors because, as a writer, I can create all this stuff, but I don't think I could do it on stage. I would just like, if I have to memorize stuff, no. If I can do improv, I'm all about it. But
Yeah.
the minute I have to read more than a paragraph in my head that it has to be perfect, no, thank you. So Linda Florentino blowing her lines, I'm not too, I didn't look at her like, oh shit, she's horrible. But I've never thought of Sigourney Weaver muscling into his shots. That is hilarious to me.
It is hilarious to me. And also he was like, she has her own hair and makeup person. The circus around her is
Okay,
ridiculous. Like,
so this is what I wanted to ask you about this, because this is your world as being an actor. I've heard some things about like, and I'm not saying you're one of them, but that sometimes actors lose their shit because certain actors have bigger trailers than they do.
oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
Oh,
the size of a trailer is a big deal.
yeah.
Because here and even Alan Rickman was like, there's one entry in here where he's like focusing on the size of the trailers.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing, because it is really petty and stupid, but there is a hierarchy on set, like like a dog kennel. And it's like the biggest dog always gets the most attention and the most deference.
Uh-huh.
So like your agent, when they negotiate a deal for you, the size of the trailer is a really big deal. And most of the time they'll be like, it's a triple banger or a double or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Only the most important people have the largest trailers. So if it's a big point of contention and status, and that status reflects in how people treat you on set and how deferential people are to you as an artist, but also your demands and the producer. If they're spending that much money on a trailer for you, they're going to treat you that much more preciously.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's good. I am saying that all those extras, like, I've had horrible hair and makeup on some things. So I don't blame anybody for insisting on their hair and makeup. And if they're a famous star like Sigourney Weaver, there's a certain standard that they want to make sure that they present on film. Although, yes, of course, it probably gets out of control with some people. But, I think the intention for a lot of these things is good. Um, but, it can get out of hand when people take it to the point where their insecurity is being
Mhm.
manifested in what they demand.
Well, it's
Because,
also, I mean, it is akin to in New York theater or London theater, do you have to share a dressing room? How big is your dressing room?
yeah,
Do you
yeah.
have to sit in a green room with a bunch of people, or do you get your own thing? And also trailers, especially for main actors, they use it as like a defense mechanism or a way to
Hmm.
get their way. They'll throw a fit and not come out of their trailers. And
Yeah.
so that's a whole, I don't want to say trope, but it is something that shows up a lot in, especially actors from the 50s and 50s and 60s. Marlon Brando did that. I can't remember what it was for, but
Oh,
Carrie
he did
Elwes,
all the time.
yeah, so Carrie Elwes, it was a movie that Carrie Elwes was in. I'm saying it wrong. Carrie from Princess Bride. Carrie and Saw. Anyway, the reason I know this is true is because Zach Galligan told me this. He's the lead in Gremlins, and we were hanging out. He's like, I was like, "What's the funniest story that you've heard from Hollywood?" And it was Carrie having to basically be the middleman between the director and Marlon Brando and trying to get him out of his trailer. And there was like, I guess, some sort of not Brando. I'm sorry, Orson Welles. Sorry,
Wow.
I get my actors who are old and heavy and emotional mixed up. I'm so sorry. Orson Welles. It was something Orson Welles would refuse to come out of his trailer. And it was
Wow.
the whole production shuts down. And I know that was a thing with Marilyn Monroe as well. Lindsay Lohan was notorious for doing that too. Not that I'm comparing these great actors with with Lindsay, though I love Lindsay. I just love the idea though that they're using their trailers almost like castle fortresses where they're like, I'm not leaving and you can't come in. And this whole production's losing money while we sit here and argue about one tiny thing. And it's real. It's a real thing that happens even today. And I don't know why I love those stories, but it's just one of those things where actors versus directors, it's always such an interesting
Yeah,
thing
I
to
mean,
because
it's a whole. Well, here's an example of like everybody sees Alan Baldwin, Alec Baldwin. He's
yeah.
being charged with involuntary manslaughter
Oh,
with
right. From
with the
the
gun.
Rust movie. Yeah.
And everybody on a set who knows how a set works is like, why in the world would they charge him? They should charge the weapons person, they should
Uh-huh.
charge the prop people, they should charge the AD. Because actors are supposed to be shown a gun. Like when I had a gun, I was used a gun on a recent set.
Uh-huh.
And the procedures that you go through normally that are standard on a set is they open that gun. The stunt person or the armorer shows you the gun. They show you the empty chamber.
Yeah.
They ask anybody on set, would you like to inspect the gun before it gets handed over to an actor?
Yeah.
There are so many required steps that have to be, and I just, you just are used to it because I've always been on sets with firearms and weapons and things like that. And
Mhm.
those procedures are so incredibly important. And the failure to follow those procedures, the last person who would have gotten that thing, assuming that it was a clear gun, would have been Alec Baldwin.
Mhm.
So the fact that this AD, especially, and whoever else had a hand in that, the armorer, I mean, they're the ones who should be convicted. But if on the outside you're like, well, he held it and he did it, that
Well,
was
he's also
him.
a producer. He's also
No,
a producer. So I think that's why Alec Baldwin is kind of the center of this because he's also, and also was in a very
Yeah, but
small
producing is he a
crew.
producer? He probably just said that to get extra money. That's what big actors
Yeah,
do on a low budget a thing.
you and I both know that there's producers who actually do work and producers who do nothing.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
just want the credit. But yeah, I that's a fascinating thing to read up on because I remember reading affidavits and things from from the crew saying, yeah, we had everything in place, but the people that were in charge of the props kept saying, hey, we need to have these safety measures, and they
Mhm.
kept getting told no,
Yep,
and so
yep,
they all
yep,
walked
yep.
off. They all walked off. They're like, we don't want our name on this. You're gonna something bad's gonna happen. I don't
I
think they made the thing happen. I think they were just warning against it.
No, they were saying an accident's gonna happen because they did. I mean, that's what
They were
happened.
using the same gun to shoot cans during the break
But what with real bullet I mean,
with
these
real
people
bullets.
should be in jail.
With real bullets, and that's the problem. I mean, you can be killed by a stunt gun without a bullet too. I mean,
Easily,
there's just
easily.
I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean, there's 4 or 5 different kinds of guns you have in a set. You have a rubber gun, you have a
yeah.
prop gun, you have an airsoft gun, you have, there's never supposed to be a real gun on set.
No. No, no, no. You should never have something that can actually fire. There shouldn't have been any real bullets at all anywhere near that production.
No, I mean, it's just astonishing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So I
so,
think that's
we're not
why
gonna
yeah, we won't go into too much, but I think that's why it's being so much in the news is because this is crazy and this should never happen again, and
Yeah. Well, but
hopefully
it's happened yeah, I mean,
I mean,
poor
it
poor
happened with
Brandon
Crow,
yeah,
Brendan Lee, yeah,
Brandon
with
Lee.
the Crow, but that was I do think that was a freak accident. I don't think it was,
Yeah, that was a freak accident, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
but
Anyway.
anyway, but I do okay, so just to, wrap it up,
Yep.
I will say that I'm very glad that you guys, liked the book. I hope you did. I hope everyone that was part of this liked it, and, I just like it because I am a nosy individual who loves to read about people's personal lives, especially people that I respect and admire, but also to see a side of them that I didn't know was there, um,
Yeah, yeah.
and also just get a glimpse of what is it like to live, a year like Alan Rickman, and I think we got it. I think it was
We
pretty
definitely got it, and it was really I mean, what a cool he lived a life. That was a cool life.
yeah, and I don't know, like, it made me wanna start journaling again, though, of course, in the era of COVID, I never leave my house, so it would probably just be like a Virginia Woolf never leaves her house kinda thing, but
Yeah.
I don't know, like, I really love things that are, raw, discussion, like, basically raw interpretation of what they saw. You don't have a lot of editors or people second guessing things. It's just what was written is what you get to read, and I love
Mhm.
that. So, I personally love diaries over, autobiographies, just because you never really know who's writing that
Yeah, yeah,
autobiography.
yeah, yeah.
Some of those memoirs, like,
Oh,
what
for
was it
they don't have anything to do with them. I mean, let's
well,
be honest.
San Francisco Sketch Fest always did this thing every year, and I think they do it in LA too, where there's comedians that will read from celebrities' memoirs that you can tell they wrote it or they didn't. Paris Hilton's one, definitely she wrote it because it's completely Paris like talk, but also Justin Bieber, I think his first autobiography came out like with his first hit, and it's like, dude, you haven't lived your life yet. What are you
Yeah.
doing? But it's just interesting to read, like, the Dolly Parton I think Dolly Parton has 3 autobiographies that are very insightful, but I don't know, there's just something about the diary format that makes me feel like we're getting the real person, and it's not, like, going through a bunch of filters. I
Yeah.
wish we published all 27 volumes, but I guess that's probably
Jeez, I mean, that's a lot. Also,
unrealistic.
I just wanna see what was redacted, you know what I'm saying? Because he had a wit and an acid tongue that I would really like to
Oh,
see what
yeah.
he really thought about. What was the deal with Paltrow?
What the what?
Gwyneth Paltrow. The 2 or 3 times, he was just like, ugh, he hated
Yeah.
her.
Again, I think it was because of, weren't they together? Wasn't I don't know, I feel like Affleck and her
I
were
don't
together.
know, but
Uh,
also she was in Shakespeare in Love, and she wasn't British, and maybe her accent
oh,
was
yeah,
bad
that
to
could be
British
it.
people, who knows?
You know what? That could be it because I just, finished rewatching the Thorne trilogy, Thorne.
Mhm.
It's like, 3 different, series, same actors, but Sandra Oh is in it, and she's not British, and they have her doing a British accent. And I was reading the reviews, and there's like some people that are giving her a pass because it's right after Grey's Anatomy, and she had a pretty big following. And then other people are like, "Why did she attempt this accent? It's not even close to what
Oh
it's doing."
gosh.
So
Yeah.
I don't think Americans are that critical of when British people do our accents, because if you watch The Wire, those are almost all British actors in that,
Yeah.
and same with True Blood. So it's like, but they're doing American accents, but they're not doing just Texan, which is usually you would think that that's what they would go to. Just like when I try to do a British accent, I sound like Cockney that doesn't exist. I think we tried this too, Felicia, in our Vaginal Fantasy Romance Book Club, where we try to do accents, and
Oh
everything
boy.
you said sounded Australian, but you were trying to do
You
Swedish and
know, I
French.
am known for my how dare you? I'm known for my acumen and accent.
Thanks to Duolingo, I think you'll probably get it. But I just know my accents are horrible. And when I dated British people, they would make fun
Yeah.
of me trying to do a British accent. But at least I didn't pretend I was British like Madonna. At least I didn't just
Yeah.
pretend that if I'm there a month, I'm suddenly British. I don't do that. But yeah, I think it's something to do with Alan Rickman is just the type of guy that he's going to be snarky. He's going to have commentary on everything. Now that I like read this book, read his diary, I want to go back and watch interviews with him at press junkets, because I could
Yeah.
now look behind his eyes and probably know exactly what he's thinking of that journalist or his co-stars, because he
Yeah.
said it in the diary, but we didn't have that info until this diary came out. So I kind of want to go back and look at that.
Well, there you go. Okay, so for next month, I want to pick a book that Rocket Soup, one of our mods, picked out. It's called Stolen Focus: Why You Can't Pay Attention and How to Think Deeply Again.
Oh,
It looks like a really interesting book. I think we're due for some nonfiction, and I think
yeah.
it'll be a really interesting discussion. It's a lot of it's about like how apps have just basically been programmed to make us
Oh,
not pay attention to things, and so it's really interesting. So
so it's more about
I
normal people attention spans, not attention deficit like what I have, which is I can't pay attention ever.
I don't know. Rocket Soup, in his review of this, said, I will point out there's a discussion of ADHD in here that some reviewers take issue with.
Oh,
I
okay.
personally saw it as a reasonable exploration into causes, whether it's genetic or environmental or both. And the author
Mhm.
takes pains to validate that it's a real life lived experience regardless. So, anyway,
Oh, yeah.
want to give
Okay.
that caveat. And I think it'll be a really interesting discussion. Great.
Yeah.
Lastly, guys, I'm not sure if you saw the news that the Rally.io platform is now closing. So we are not going to be having this book club behind closed doors anymore. Anybody who wants to listen live on the last Tuesday of the month can come
Hey,
on in.
by the way,
Bonnie,
I didn't cash out my rally coin, so I don't I don't know if I had any money in there. I just looked at rally coins like itchy and scratchy money, like it was
yeah,
real. Like it's like
yeah.
Chuck E. Cheese dollars that you can only use at Chuck E. Cheese. Like
It's
that's
an evolving situation whether I'm going to get my money off the platform. So that is
maybe
interesting. I
that
will.
is cryptocurrency for you.
Yep. But at the end of the day, I hope that everybody felt like they got their money's worth when they got the membership, or if I got them a shout out or a picture or anything, you got something physical. And if you were ever a Geeks member, please go to the Discord and go to the Geeks to the crypto what is it called? The crypto
The
I'm
crypto
blanking.
chat.
Yeah, the crypto chat channel and the Discord, and I have a little form you can fill out to get a physical Geeks pin in the mail if you
Oh,
were a supporter, because I did want you guys. It was a really interesting experiment. I learned a lot. I lost
uh-huh.
a lot as well, but at the same time, we all could just say, "Hey, life gives you experiences," and I knew going in that it was an experimental. I just didn't want to. I always like doing things that are cutting edge and doing things creative with technology, and I do think we made some cool things, and we hung out,
Yeah.
and we'll continue to hang out until we reevaluate what we wanna do with our time, so, come on
And this
by.
and just so you know, this is like the highlight of the month for me, these
Yeah.
things. So, not just having a great discussion with you, Felicia, but also reading people's comments and
Yeah.
chat. And I always learn a lot. I always laugh. I always feel better about the universe after we have these things. So I would do this for free no matter what. And I am just glad that we can get together Even though we both live in LA, we never see each other even before
I
COVID.
know, it's horrible, but
I think
yeah, no,
I think I have a baby gift for you, and I'm like, "Wait, she's 6 now? I guess that's okay.
that's
I'll
yeah.
who else gets pregnant." But yeah, I
Well,
it's
it is 18 months of hanging out almost weekly with everybody. I mean, I think I'm pretty good on the track record,
oh,
and it
yeah,
has been an
totally.
amazing community. And so as we open up the Geeks area to everybody on the Discord and all of the Hangouts, we'll evaluate how much we could keep doing it. I would still like doing most of my Hangouts. They're fun. The creativity is fun. Hanging out with my brother's fun. I do felicitations in the book club, and they go on my podcast feed. Like there's no reason to stop doing it. So we'll just have to figure out what happens. So thank you everybody for being here, and we'll see you next month to read the other book.
Yay,
Thanks, Rocket Soup, for the suggestion.
thank you.
Okay, bye everybody.